Great. Thank you all for joining us today. This is very exciting for us. My name is Scott Coffin. I've been with Make I'm in my 5th year with Make, which has gone by very, very fast. And I'm on the value engineering team here. I'm joined by 2 incredible panelists, Diego Alberti and Gabriel Stock. These are longtime friends of Make, and let's give them a warm waves welcome. All right, perfect. So before we jump into things, I'd like to just give a little bit of background on the session today. Both Diego and Gabriel are longtime friends of Make and pillars in the Make community. They have a ton of experience deploying Make at their own organizations and bring 2 very different perspectives and backgrounds on ways to actually implement Make. So because this difference in backgrounds is not by coincidence. We wanted this because it's a good starting point for a conversation. And I think both of their perspectives will resonate with most of the folks here today in various different ways. So my hope is that by the end of this, you'll be able to leave with some knowledge and leave those doors a little smarter than you came in, and maybe take some of the wisdom and experience that these guys have had at their organizations and be able to apply that to your own businesses and organizations. So quick point on format. So we've prepared some content to start the conversation, share some information with you all that I think will be useful, and then after that we'll dive into some Q&A. So if you do have questions during the panel today, hold on to those. Somebody else in the audience will likely also have those types of similar questions, and then please, by all means, grab the mic, help us out here, ask the questions, and let's all learn collectively together. So with that, I want to just do a quick introduction of our 2 panelists. So first question is to Gabriel. What do you do? Who do you do it for? And how long have you been using Make?
Sure. So I'm a senior engineer manager at Trial Perk. We are a company, TMC, trial management company. We bring people together around the world. And I'm in charge of a couple of teams that are trying to automate all these manual processes that different departments have, especially customer care. And to do that, we were trying to understand, okay, besides doing it in a traditional way, like with software engineer, we're trying to see how we can empower them to build their own tools and automate their own processes. And at the end, try to see how they can use AI to optimize what they do, make it in a more efficient way and reducing manual work.
And just quickly, how long have you been using Make?
Oh, sorry. It's been a year that we are using Make.
I know, it's not fair to ask 3 questions off the bat, right? That back to back to back. But anyway, Diego, to you.
Hey, everyone. My name is Diego Alberti. I'm the head of automation and AI at a consulting agency called Adaptify. I've worked with Make for the last 4 years, implemented a center of excellence at a large organization, 50,000 plus, and we supported all departments within there. And it's been 4 years of building and improving and showcasing what we could do with Make.
Great, guys. Thank you so much. All right, so let's jump into some content. All right, so first things first, let's define some terms. The title of today's panel is Freestyle or Framework. Gabriel, first question's for you. If you could define freestyle for us, and I swear if you make another joke about a rap battle, Diego and I are going to walk off stage.
I won't do that anymore. Did many times. So freestyle, so for us, our mission was to deploy Make to multiple departments and multiple people at the same time. So the way we took it was we trained people on this tool. We trained them in AI, in automating processes, things like APIs, data structures. And then we gave them a Make account to almost everybody that requested it and allowed them to connect the tools that they have or that they use daily, being like Google Drive, Gmail, Zendesk, or Salesforce, to start seeing how they can automate their day-to-day work and reduce this small task, well, not just small, also big tasks that they were doing and consuming most of their time. And going back to the point of freestyle, we see it like everybody can build, everybody can become a builder, and empowering them, right?
So I think that's probably common for a lot of folks in the audience, right? When you think about Make, you just give out a license to whoever wants one, right? So we think about that as more freestyle. Diego, if you'll share with us a little bit about what we mean by framework.
Framework is more focused on governance and change management. So from a framework perspective, you build out an actual team and infrastructure in place that will support your rolling out of Make. How do you manage teams? How do you manage users? How do you provide access? How do you audit, provide reporting? How do you visualize ROI? All of those things are important, and it has to be scalable. And in parallel to that, you have business process improvement, capability improvements within your team members, so you keep everybody upskilled. So it's more focused on the change management and governance aspect and scalability.
That's perfect. And I think you hit the nail on the head. So when the overarching theme really of today's presentation is governance. So Freestyle being decentralized, framework being centralized. Really focusing on structure, center of excellence, building those types of organizations in your institution that can actually help you deploy more effectively. So there are pros and cons to both of these, and we're really going to flesh those out today, and I'm excited to hear the conversation on the two and really get to maybe a happy middle ground, because there's good elements on both sides, but really finding the balance is the key to making the most of your Make license and being successful with automation in general. So we'll continue a little bit with our next slide here. So with this one, I'd like to open up with Gabriel here. So in terms of thinking about how you've deployed Make in a decentralized way, it'd be great to know a little bit more about the advantages to start, and then also some of the disadvantages that you've seen.
Sure. So in terms of advantages, I think one is that you don't become a bottleneck, because everybody can start building, and that they don't need to go through you to create their scenarios or deploy the scenarios. Then, yeah, you have instant builders. You create 15, you give access to 15 people. Those 15 people start creating, experimenting things. At the same time, when they start experimenting, they get blockers. So that's part of the disadvantages we have. But also you get a fast pace, because there's people, if you have small things that they can automate, they can do it really fast, and that's something we couldn't be building for. Like something that draft emails for 50 different people, we couldn't be building it, like personalized, but they can do it themselves. And that you can get really surprising results from like not technical people. And coming from an engineering background myself, it's amazing how like anybody can build amazing stuff that we couldn't think like before, a couple of years before. And for a small organization, well, we are not small, we are 1,800 people. So, but for a small organization compared with Diego, the experience of Diego, it's something that can work, right? So yeah, those are the things I've seen.
Yeah, and I like that we stuck with some of the actual pros. I think that's a good place to begin for sure. Speed being the main one, right? Like you don't want to get in the way, or you think you don't want to get in the way, I should say, of your builders out there who want to create their automations, right? So that's the advantage of the decentralized approach. Anybody can build at their own pace with their own creativity in mind. And that can lead to some really surprising results.
Yeah.
Surprising could go either way.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. Diego, maybe you could share some of the advantages then of the centralized approach. And I know that this slide that we're sharing here has a lot of content, but it's really rich, and it really leans into Diego's background and experience. So please take your time and really go into this.
Yeah, so with the centralized approach, some of the positives are you can be ROI-driven prioritization. So when you get projects in, you can identify, from a centralized approach, the way that it works is you're typically funneling everything through one team. So all projects and requests go through one team. And in doing so, you then need to identify how you figure out your ROI, which projects do you pick, which projects do you select. It helps us with become agile. We work in a 2-week sprints for delivery, and that's overall projects. But the key thing is actually measuring metrics, like what are your KPIs? Time savings, are you removing people from other processes that they can work on other projects? How quickly are you developing versus how much time savings is that in comparison to. And then the biggest thing is really the parallel work streams. So with all the governance in place, you're able to have a project delivery track. So you're always delivering a project. You have your improvement track, which is where you're improving your own business processes. So for example, a new request comes in, what happens after the request comes in? You generate 5 other tickets, you go in here, send an email notification, you add them to this group. All of those are business processes that we will run in the back end, and we'll improve them over time as well. The other track is the innovation track. You want to make sure that you're leveraging the latest technology and evaluating it constantly, which leads to the capability track. That's where you're upskilling your team. For example, the Make Academy is a great resource for from starting off. You start with level 1 and you make your way up. That's how we trained all of our team members, and that kind of goes into the bottom piece here, where you go into like monthly retrospectives, quarterly assessments, annual planning, and the innovation pipeline. But overall, you could measure time savings, your business process efficiency across different verticals and departments within your organization. Ultimately, you can streamline everything and funnel through one team. So we also provide architecture diagrams, workflow diagrams for everything that we create. So there's technical specifications as well. So as we continuously improve, we just make updates to the existing documentation first, and then that allows us to keep track of our improvements over time. So sort of our own version control for internal business processes. But yeah, there's a lot that you can do with when you apply the change management and governance with a scalability focus as well.
Thank you so much, Diego. All right, so Gabriel, I know that there have been some cons with the Freestyle framework as well. Maybe you could share some of those with us.
Yeah, sure. So there are many cons with the Freestyle. I was telling you, yesterday I came back to the hotel at midnight, and some people was asking me on Slack to get more credits, and we don't have that as a streamlined process. And the main thing is, like, sometimes we don't know what's going on in the background, what are they building, if it's like valuable or not, if we are getting value of the credits that we spend. That's one of the more important things. Also, we ran out of credits like many times in the past until we figure out how to organize different teams, set limits, etc. And that was a problem because it has a cost.
We might just actually have a slide on that.
Yeah, I think we do have one.
I think it comes a little later.
Probably
or towards the end.
Towards the end, yeah. Sorry.
But anyway, so some things happened, though, that led you to think you needed more centralization, right?
Yeah. Things like security and risk. For example, sharing connections. If you don't organize correctly your teams, people can share the connection with another one, access their Gmail, access their Google Drive. We have things like when everybody connected Slack on the same team, people sending Slack messages on behalf of other ones. So you need to take into account all those things, right? And then what tools they connect. People get a lot of freedom, but then they can connect Salesforce, Zendesk, and you need to take into account PII and all those legal matters that are very important, especially here.
Definitely. So operations can be consumed very rapidly in places that are unexpected. Connections being used, again, maybe inadvertently, maybe advertently. Hopefully not. Yeah. Lots of risk there that can actually pop up. So Diego, now the next question is really for you. What led you to choose a centralized approach at your prior organization?
Yeah, so centralized approach, we were operating from a top-down, where the projects were coming from other teams and executives. So we needed to funnel the work through our internal teams so that we can control least privilege access, service accounts. The other key part is in working with these teams, you have administrative access control. So you have the access that you already need via service accounts to those systems. And then you use that for the least privilege access pieces. You have a dedicated team. Large organizations require complex scenarios too. This image that you see up here is a pretty good example. when we realized we needed it, when we started the centralized approach, it was more of like the left here. What you're looking at here is a SpaceX Raptor engine. It just goes to show how they first started. That's kind of how we started. We had processes all over the place. Some of them worked, some of them didn't work. That's kind of where the continuous improvement work stream comes in. We continuously started to improve it, reiterate, refine it, and that's kind of where the how's it going comes from. That's where we led to the center of excellence and we use it to operate and manage costs from an operational standpoint. But ultimately, what you want to do is you want to refine your approach over time, and you start to add in governance and scalability, and ultimately, the centralized approach, while it can become a bottleneck, there's a lot of pros that you get out of it because you have control of the accounts, you have control of the workflows, you have control of debugging, like everything just comes under your wheelhouse. Some of the issues that we initially ran into that led us to this too is that when you're in a decentralized approach, you're not the one that's creating the automation. So then when you have to support them, you have to then reverse engineer what those workflows were, all their interconnections, their service accounts, all the databases they're connected, what files they're using. It gets really complex. So you end up spending a lot of time reverse engineering and then trying to figure out the proper solution or fix for them. So this was another big reason why we went down the centralized approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this image. This, I think, resonates with a lot of us probably, where when you first start, it's overly complex, but then you finally get down into the essence and really what matters. And I think that's really the synthesis of the freestyle and framework question. So there is actually a third F, it's a silent F, and it's fusion. So we think of this as the hybrid approach, and this is really the middle ground, where we're bringing in sort of those refined elements of that later stage Raptor rocket, and you can actually use the elements from both sides. And this is really, from our perspective and our discussions on this, where we think is the happy middle ground. Maybe there's a little bit more framework for some of you in your institutions, maybe there's a little bit more freestyle, but in the end, there's some components from both. And this is where I think we're going to get into some really rich discussion. So finding the sweet spot. This is really where I'd like to focus some time. Where do you guys see what do you see as like the right balance, and how do we find that? Feel free to just jump in as you will.
Sure, I guess I get started. From an enterprise perspective, what I see is you kind of need a mix of the two. My end goal always, when we were planning this initially, was to ultimately go the hybrid route. So the centralized route is you're basically funneling everything through one team. The hybrid route for me is you now can open it up to other teams, but you have controlled environments. These team members have been educated in how to use Make. They've been educated in the process. They understand the limitations of the tool, like the limitations of operations, because we limit teams with operations. I think the best scenario is where you have these power teams where you can manage them. Who are the stakeholders that are in charge of those teams? Assign them teams and give them the flexibility to expand and create their own automations. But still having a centralized approach, which for me is for the more complex scenarios, parent-child scenarios that are required, or larger initiatives that are a bit more complex than just sending an email after something is triggered. That's, for me, what the balance of hybrid is. You have a very controlled, centralized team for complex workflows, and then you open it up via education first as a prerequisite to any user that needs it within the organization so that you don't limit them from automating.
That's great, Diego. Thank you so much. And there's always going to be some trade-offs too, right? So Gabriel, maybe you could share with us some of the trade-offs here.
Sure. So I think some of the trade-off of like living the freestyle is like making sure like you don't kill the creativity. You can allow that. You can add governance, but not removing creativity. And what I'm seeing, at least on our side, is like we need to start defining more standardization, standard process of prioritization, how we calculate the KPIs of the automations, the return of investment, and also how we, you mentioned that about training, how we train people from the basics to like getting to the expert level, because what we saw also is like, even on freestyle, there's a point where we found a bottleneck because things get more complicated, more complex, and then people doesn't know how to resolve them, and we need to jump and help them. So, okay, it's important to give that training, getting the expertise, and then, let's say, unlock more credits and give them more autonomy once you know they are ready. And also, it's very important what I call the product engineering mindset. I work with departments like customer care, sales, or finance, where maybe they don't have that product mindset. So sharing this product mindset where they understand, okay, what's the problem, understanding the details, going deeper onto, okay, how we're going to solve this, create like a design document, same as we do when we design software. And then after doing that on paper, then go to make and implement the solution, right?
Yeah, so one thing that was interesting that you said was, in an attempt to remove bottlenecks by opening up Make to everybody, you've actually created bottlenecks for your own team because you are the experts and with engineering backgrounds and some software development skills. So when people get stuck and blocked or they leave the organization and there's a problem, you guys are stuck the ones triaging this and actually, reducing your bandwidth.
Exactly.
Diego, any thoughts on these trade-offs as well?
Yeah, I mean, even from a centralized approach, right? There's some trade-offs. There's perceived friction when you implement an intake request. You have to identify what are your needs. Are your needs more important than the next project or this project? So sometimes just thinking about going through the entire workflow does remove the allure from a centralized approach to an extent, where they can just get started with it. The risk with a centralized team also is you can be undersourced. So from our experience, what happens is you kind of, is that saying sipping on your own champagne? So you start to iterate and you improve and start to roll out all these workflows and business processes, and then you get flooded with requests, but then you still have a small team that's managing this, so you can only roll these things out within a certain, we work in sprints, so you only have, you have to wait till the next sprint or the sprint after that. So you start to accumulate a bit of a backlog. We get to a point where there's a few months worth of backlog for project work. So that's another pretty big issue. It's ultimately, you become a bottleneck to an extent.
Yeah, and the reality is, even at an 1,800 person company, if you only have a small team making your make scenarios, there's going to be value left on the table and opportunities that are missed. I can only imagine the scale of that when you have 50,000 employees that you're trying to automate on behalf of. And I think that actually is a nice segue into our next question, which is really thinking about like risk and rewards, adding new users to your instances. And Gabriel, this is a tie back to our earlier question, right? Sometimes you end up with things like this.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of many cases where we had it was a scenario of 3 modules, but it was consuming like 3,000 operations on every run and running for 30 minutes. And what we saw is like the way it was built, it wasn't done in an efficient way because we didn't have the experience of using aggregators, bulk updates, etc. And when you go like freestyle, everybody can build, you can have many of these scenarios that you don't have control. So finding a way to having guardrails to keep this tidy and not falling into these problems is very important, right? And it's part of the transition that we are doing right now. And I think it's part of training. And Make Academy is a great place for that, right?
Yeah, and Diego, I just love this slide so much because you have all the different tracks on this, and one of them is a big part about like learning, and you mentioned Make Academy as well as like leveling up your new users. Can you maybe share a little bit more about this and specifically about bringing in new folks to using Make it in a larger organization?
Sure. So to give you an example, if you think that it was a large team, it's just 3 people. With primarily just 1 developer that we made this impact. So developer that started also did not have any experience with Make whatsoever. Completely brand new, has no coding experience, business analyst background, was able to use Make within a month, and within 6 months we were saving about 5,000 days worth of time savings. And that's all through following this entire process. But education was the biggest piece. The Make Academy, those initial courses made it really easy to kind of absorb that information and understand how to use Make, how to use, create arrays, all the complexity that he needed. And it was enough for him to go back and forth between that and me helping him as well, a combination of upskilling our team. It was pretty efficient. And within a month, as I mentioned, he was up and running and kind of just automating everything too. So the Academy was key.
it's really hard for me to conceptualize 5,000 days saved of work. So that's like unreal. And I can only imagine, once you start leveling up more people and creating more, make experts in your organization, the power of that, especially at scale. Which is another kind of nice connection to our next point, which is, thinking about, when you have a limited team, and you go with a little bit more centralized approach, how do you prioritize?
So prioritization for us is what is the business impact? What is the value add to the organization? We calculate that in a few ways. It's either through a business initiative that's been prioritized from an executive perspective, or we use this value-based prioritization, which is your monthly volume multiplied by how many tasks you do per month, and then if you have multiple resources working on them, you multiply that by the resource. You want to focus on when you're looking at this right here. You're looking at the top left. That is your primary place where you want to look at. This is Eisenhower matrix showing the level of effort to impact. This is primarily how we pick projects and prioritize them. Quick wins, they're top priority. You can implement them immediately, and you can build early customer success stories. The other part is that's really good, especially for the beginning when your teams are first getting started, or if you want to get somebody used to making a few projects. The bottom left quadrant is the best because that's where your fill work is. Those are quick implementations. They're really good for upskilling your team and building out those initial automations. And then on the top right quadrant, you're going to see the strategic projects. Those, you're going to have to plan them thoroughly. You're probably working across multiple departments across the organization. And you're going to have dedicated resources to help you. That might take a few months to complete this project. It might be one phase. It might be multiple phases. Those are more of the strategic ones. I would do those after any of the quick wins are completed, or if those were initiatives that were pushed onto the team. Now, the ones you really want to avoid is the bottom right quadrant, where it's extremely high effort and very low impact. Those you want to actually defer or eliminate. I could give you an example of one. We actually had a request where it was all these minor integrations and automations within a project management tool. And ultimately, what we identified was the customer was slowly developing essentially a competing task management tool that didn't have the features that task management tool had. So we decided to just reprioritize and not do that project. So that's a good example of one that you want to avoid, where you're just duplicating your efforts and you're recreating something that already exists. But this is the key way that you identify your business impact. You have to focus on what is the actual value to the business, not just what can we automate.
Now, I've got to imagine people love it when you say yes to them. How do you manage when you have to tell somebody, maybe we can't do this?
Well, I mean, when you have metrics, it's kind of hard because you can just say, well, this project, it's like if I were to say, hey, here's $2,000 and give me 100, you're always going to make that transaction. Since you could visualize that, I can just show this is a higher priority than this one. So unfortunately, we're going to have to push this back, or it really depends on the availability. We were talking about the bottleneck. So if we have availability, you can throw them into a sprint. But that's the beauty of Make, that you can really iterate quickly.
Can you speak a little bit about the formality of calculating ROI? Because I recall that this was actually quite a big, requirement before you would actually enter into a project with one of your stakeholders.
Yeah, because what you want to do is you want to identify what is the actual return on your investment. You have to measure that. So one of the things we initially faced was friction. When you start off with that question and you're working with teams, the first thing is, why are you asking me about time savings? Why are you asking me about resources? So we tried to remove the focus from that. And what we did is, simultaneously, we helped them document their process. So as we documented their process, we then started to identify how much time is this taking, how many people are they using. So naturally, the questions came to us. The answers for those questions came without us having to ask them directly. And simultaneously, you're documenting your business process for them. You're identifying all of those metrics that you need. And thirdly, you're able to now you're building your user stories for your project, so you can hand them off to your developer, do immediate feasibility after that. So you're kind of getting everything in one shot, and that's all with one customer meeting.
Great, Diego. Thank you so much. And this is a good question for you, Gabriel. So now you're a year into using Make. You've rolled it out. You've got a lot of scenarios in the wild. Maybe you could share a little bit more about what you wish you knew when you started.
Sure. So, well, first, teams. I think that's the first things to know because we started putting everybody on the same team, and that created like confusion with the connections, etc. So organize in teams. That's the first thing I wish I knew, like before.
Yeah, even using an actual individual user as their own team, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Things. Yeah.
And we started with folders, and then we realized that, okay, folders is not for that. Then, yeah, tech dev, as in like software, you can have tech dev in Make because the scenarios grow in complexity. You start moving things, and if you don't document things correctly, you don't make a standard process of how to build it, like things can go crazy. You start with scenarios with unlinked connections just because you were testing out. So, and that creates the complexity. Then something that we haven't thought about is like a lot of people will be building the similar things in different ways. So having like a library of snippets or how to build common processes. That's important, and also learning the special thing like error handlers, things like that, that we haven't learned about those. So people had errors in their processes, a scenario got posted, and like that created confusion about if they were posted because they didn't have credits or posted because there was an error. And we had to get into the scenarios, understand what happened, and then realize that, oh, you're missing an error handler here, and things like that. So, and then having a good understanding on the languages. A lot of people confuses AI tokens with credits, and they run out of tokens in Gemini or OpenAI, and they come asking for credits in Make. And yeah, you need to have people be educated and know about the differences of AI.
Absolutely. And Diego, same question to you. You know, what do you wish you'd known when you started as well? I mean, that rocket example comes back to mind. Like you probably put in a lot in place up front that you maybe had to back down.
Well, I wish I had a cheat list early on. Definitely, I wish I had sessions like this early, right? Like in general, what's happening here at Make, it's much more mature now, and from an enterprise perspective, this is 4 years back. We kind of had to figure everything out from scratch. So we had to figure, even the issues you have with the teams and all that. Those are all things you could go through the documentation. For us, that part was because we started off centralized. It was a little easier, but you still don't know everything. So you end up with the first iteration of that rocket. It kind of works, but it looks crazy.
Yeah.
And now you start to refine that. So I think the biggest thing is we try to, if I was going to leave you with something, is don't try to make it perfect now, right? Like it's not going to be perfect. You're going to continuously learn from your business process. Your process is going to be different from his process. So you want to focus on the next 3-4 steps. What is that? Implement it, reiterate, improve. So I wish I'd never started with a full-scale plan. We went and we were like, all right, we need a business process for this. We need a business process for this. You go through all this planning, and then you end up using 25% of it. So I think the biggest thing is just working, focus on what are the next 3 big things you need to do, and continue to work freestyle if you need to, right? But you're slowly moving into, that Raptor 3 engine versus the Raptor 1. So that should really be what the focus is. Don't try to perfect it. Get started, refine, and improve.
Really useful. Great, Diego. Thank you so much. All right, so we're now into the second portion of our panel, which is Q&A. So I hope that this has resonated with a lot of you, and it certainly points at seeing all of the credits that have been used in that one scenario always sticks out to me. So if there are any questions to the audience, we have microphones over here, and our lovely helpers will bring you a mic.
The question can be for either one of you. So what are the signals or a major signal that you're ready to move from a freestyle approach to a structured approach, or vice versa? Maybe you are structured and centralized, but you want to move to more of a hybrid and empower more of the individual teams?
Well, I can start with freestyle to hybrid. It's, running out of credits, that's the first one, because it accumulates of cost. And then, I would say security and risk. We have a security team in the company, and when they start seeing people connecting to everything, which is, it's good because we enable them, but at the same time, it has a risk per se. So those are the two signals I will use to, okay, move to the next step, like organizing, getting more structured. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think from a centralized perspective, moving to hybrid for me is when you have that fine automated workflow process for to be transparent with your users. Before you get access, you have to complete this course. Then after you complete the Make Academy, then you have to make sure that you've run through X, Y, and Z. Once you have that process in place, I think you can move into the more hybrid approach. I just think you need to have the centralized approach refined. It doesn't have to be perfect, but as long as you have that going and it's pretty streamlined, then you can focus on the secondary portion, which is onboarding those users. How are you going to verify that they took the Make Academy? How are you going to distribute their accounts? Are you going to create teams for each individual user? Are you going to group them up by department? So it's really defining what that is. Once you have that within your organization and you know, then that's when you can make the transition and you start opening up to like power user teams. That would be the ideal approach. Now you have that centralized complex team for those complex workflows, and now you open it up to your organization safely while giving them the specific access that they need within their own team, so you can prevent them for like something that you mentioned earlier with like they were all in one team and then they start accessing the same account or sending Slack. Those are all things that you have to think about, right? Sometimes you just figure it out. That's the refinement part, but it happens in a safe environment.
Yeah.
Right? So,
luckily, it was kind of testing, so.
Yeah, exactly. So and there's a bunch of things that I think would trigger that, but it's really the upskilling and capability portion that has to be in place and defined, and then the governance around distributing that.
Great. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Talia.
First, thank you for all these insights and being on stage and sharing. My question is about both methods or ideas of freestyling and govern. How the make user force enlarge through this time. I know it's not perfectly comparable between 1 year and 4 years, but how the waves are really going through more or less users in both situations. And I'm also curious and interested in which kind of roles potentially are really rising through that kind of, spread out the make to the user force itself. Okay. Is this question feasible?
Yes.
So if you want to take the user force one, like Freestyle.
So we started with some trainings with 9X. It's a partner that work with us and bring the tool to the company, and that made a huge impact. A lot of people trying to join and start building. It created a lot of fast paced that at some point it kind of decreased it, so we had to keep like launching another more trainings, self-serve trainings also inside the company. And then the word starts spreading out. Like when someone finds like a coworker that, I'm drafting my emails automatically with this tool, the word spreads out and everybody wants to start doing new stuff, have ideas, and now online you have a lot of resources. So yeah, I think it's like waves. Like it starts going up, then a bit down, then go up again, depending on the situation and the new developments that come out like every day. Yeah.
The second portion of the question? Do you want to repeat the second portion of the question for everybody?
The second question was about which kind of roles mainly really attempted first to make. So did it be more the analysts? Did it be more the defined department, more technical folks, more business-oriented folks? So what kind of role in a company, or is there a role that jumps first on that thing, so have a pattern like how you can really make automation going?
Yeah, in our case, I would say multiple roles, like business analyst, team leads from customer care, people from sales, managers that wanted to improve how their teams work. So like it was a very diverse type of role, people from any department.
And I don't think it's role specific. I think it's more person specific. So they just have to have the the will and eagerness to just learn and innovate, because we all have actually our own automations that we even use ourselves, and we're constantly using it. And then I don't think that there is any one specific role that needs it more than the other. I think it's just more of a who you are. Like I mentioned earlier, our developer wasn't a developer at all, and he completely figured it out and was able to build all this stuff out. So just impressive what you could do with Make, and starting off with the training.
Thanks you.
Hi, this is Zeb from Infuse Group. It's my first event, so great panel, by the way.
Welcome, thank you.
So I guess my question comes from more around the strategy side. So we work with quite a lot of organizations that are currently choosing tools, especially for AI, what their roadmap looks like. Things are changing so fast. And I guess from the enterprise perspective, I'm trying to understand is what made you choose Make as the enterprise tool for automation, and compared to what else is out there in the market. So we're kind of talking from the Microsoft perspective. How does it compare for you in that world, if you have experienced it, and what advantage do you think Make has at the enterprise scale?
Really good sales guy, right?
Yeah, I can actually answer this. We actually did an entire assessment for like 6 months, and we tested out about 20 different tools, Make being one of them. A lot of the things that we saw between some of those tools is that they actually had rate limits. Some tools, if you wanted to use a module like PagerDuty, it was a premium tool that you needed to purchase on top of a license. I believe Microsoft does that. There are other tools that we've talked about, like Zapier, where they don't actually support conditional branching at scale. You were limited to like several branches. So there's quite a bit of limitation. We found that Make removed a lot of that friction, in that you're just making, you have your webhook triggers, there's a trigger, and then you can act on it just using the API directly. And now to answer your question about the AI piece, AI is complicated in an enterprise. There's a lot of intellectual property, there's a lot of things that you have to consider. So bringing in, from my experience in an enterprise, bringing in any AI is a relatively difficult task, a massive challenge. I think the approach would be to be like LLM agnostic, like something like an open router, which I believe might be something that's supported within Make too. So you can use any LLM, but from an automation standpoint, to the keynote, automation, AI needs automation. So I don't think nothing changes on the automation side, but there are quite a few issues or limitations with other tools that I just personally haven't found with Make. Now there's a few quirks, right? Which I was very actually excited about the announcements today. I've actually been building out my own AI agents and doing a few other things. Now I don't have to, right? Like what they presented, I think is the future, where you have, which is where I think you're going with the agents, where you can now just have a customer support agent, recycle that, and use it for another support agent, or you have a library of agents. For me, that's what I envision the future to be, so that they can communicate across. So what I saw today is the future for me, and I would definitively use Make for that. I have to test to see if it works the way it does, but if that's what they presented, I don't think that should be an issue. Onboarding the tool would probably be a bigger challenge than using it and finding use cases for it.
Thank you.
So I think we have time for just one more question.
Yeah, I would have one. First of all, thank you for sharing all these insights. I think it's very relatable, the way we use Make. One issue I think we see is governance on error handling. So wondering how you guys do that. I mean, you can have error responses, you can have a lot of emails being sent to one account that someone can look through. Is there an approach you have to govern errors across all your scenarios?
I could touch on that.
You can go on the centralized way of doing it.
Yeah, so that's a huge thing, right? Error handling. So the way we approached it is we actually the first thing is we always retry. In most cases, most of those errors, we use the Make API with triggers. So if there's an issue, you get an email notification, which is the trigger. That email notification, you can then use it to simply retry the scenario. we find that about 40% of the time, that's basically the fix. Maybe you ran into a rate limit issue, something was incomplete, and then you could just retry it. After that initial retry, then what happens is that gets taken, we take a DevOps approach to it. So that goes into an actual support queue, and then one of our DevOps engineers will review that and then assess, is that, what is this issue? Is it an API related? Now the more sophisticated approach that we'd like to take is actually using AI agents to do that initial support. Is this rate limit? Okay, if it's a rate limit, when did we execute it before? And then how long do we have to wait to play it again? So it will intelligently already know that it has to retry it. Another scenario that you can do with that, again, I'm throwing this out because I just saw the AI agent stuff. You can also just take the agent to connect and then validate the API, the endpoints using the API reference, and then verify what this error code means, and then include that information directly in the ticket. So essentially what happens is when your developer gets to it, he already knows more or less what he has to do. So you've also already reduced the time that it takes you to resolve the issue. So now you know what the issue is, you have it tracked, and now you kind of know where you need to go. You have some sort of guideline.
Right, thank you. Do you have any?
No, in our case, like in the most structured scenario that we have, that it's one of the in one of my teams, we send all the errors to Slack. We have an alert channel that it's a combination of Make and also our own system alerts. So we have like a firefighter, engineer that is firefighter like every day, and they look through the channel. When there's an error, they jump and figure out and find out what's going on. But yeah, for other teams, they basically find out via email that one of their automations failed and their scenario is paused, and they have to go and debug it. Usually they can fix it, but if they cannot fix it, they reach out to us like with a screenshot of the error, and that's when we need to jump and reverse engineer what Diego was mentioning, figure out what they are doing, go to the logs, and understand what's going on, and then give them an answer and some tips of how to handle like the error in the future, right?
So I really appreciate this question, and it's actually a perfect segue. So I view this panel as the first of kind of a mini series. So I'm going to be leading a panel later this afternoon, which is going to have some like expert Make users. We'll have 3 panelists who really know the tech like inside and out and have some great tips and tricks. So if you enjoyed this panel, like I definitely encourage you guys to come around 3 o'clock back here. Same room, same me, different panelists. So just to wrap things up, thank you all for joining us. It's been a pleasure. We couldn't do this without you. At Make, we appreciate all of our customers and anyone who's interested in the product. So couldn't have done it without our panelists either. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. And I know that there were other questions. So, let's give our panelists a little bit of fresh air after the presentation, but please feel free to approach them, introduce yourselves, and ask them your questions later on today if you see them outside. There's other places to find them as well. I know, Diego, you do a lot of this work on the side as well, since you recently started your new organization. Where can folks find you?
Yeah, if you want to reach out to me at linkedin.com, and you can find me on there, Diego Alberti, and then also Adaptify.com.
Amazing. All right, y'all. Thank you again, and appreciate it. Have a great Make Waves.